Hello and welcome to Voices of BlueScope, the podcast where we go behind the scenes at BlueScope to meet the people who create strength every day. I'm your host, Martin Feld. Thank you for joining us. On Friday the 29th of August, we were excited to host the team from 97.3 ABC Illawarra for a live broadcast of their breakfast radio show at the front of the hot strip mill at our Port Kembla Steelworks. This special event was planned to coincide with the 70th anniversary celebration of the hot strip mill, including dedicated interviews with leaders and current and former employees of BlueScope, while also providing a platform for members of the local community to share their memories and family stories linked to the Port Kembla Steelworks. What you're about to hear is the full series of interviews and listener contributions from the live breakfast radio show, all of which has been adapted for the podcast experience. This includes MP3 chapter markers to jump between segments, a full accompanying transcript for accessibility, and show notes that link to further images and video stories, just as you've come to expect from this podcast before. Presented by Mel James and Amy Duggan, their interviews with BlueScope people cover the history and operations of the hot strip mill, the fast-approaching 100th anniversary of the Port Kembla Steelworks, multi-generational family work experience, project and property updates, and the future of our industry in the Illawarra and Australia more broadly. So without further ado, let's tune into ABC Illawarra live from the hot strip mill.
97.3 ABC Illawarra Breakfast with Mel James, live from BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla.
Hello and a very good morning to you. Yes, that's exactly right. Live from BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla this morning, ABC Illawarra Breakfast coming your way here from the Steelworks at a really exciting and interesting time for BlueScope. We're here because it is the day before the hot strip mill's 70th birthday. And lots of other super interesting things going on at BlueScope at the moment. It's a really important moment in the Steelworks' nearly 100-year history as it tries to secure its future in a decarbonised world. There are the challenges of high energy costs, potentially looming gas shortage, all of these sorts of things, dealing with US tariffs, how to crack the nut of decarbonised steel and green steel at scale and at an affordable price. So much going on in relation to the real estate footprint of BlueScope. Of course, there's that 200 hectares of surplus land here around the steelworks where there are some pretty exciting things being planned. So much going on. So we have a lot to talk about, and we are going to be outside the hot strip mill, and then Amy is a little later going to go inside the hot strip mill. If you don't know what they do there, you will learn all about it. In fact, we're going to learn so much about the steelworks this morning. Its past, its present, its future. Loads to come on the program. So very nice to have you with us. And I hope you, as I will, I'm sure, learn a lot this morning. But first we should say a very warm hello to our gracious host today. I think that's what we should call you, Greg. So Greg Baldock, you're the manager of the hot mills. Is that right, Greg?
Yes, correct. Welcome, Mel. Yeah, I'm the manager of hot mills, which is a broader footprint than just the strip mill. But today, the hot strip mill, we're here to celebrate the strip mill and its 70th birthday celebrations.
I know we're going to learn a lot more about the strip mill later on, but Jen, producer extraordinaire, came up with a pretty good analogy, and you can tell me if it is actually good or not. She said it's like a massive pasta maker where you kind of put it through the machine and it flattens it out and then you do it again. Is that kind of what's happening?
That's okay, I reckon. That's okay. But basically we just take a big slab of steel and turn it into a big steel hot rolled coil. Yeah, okay. So we do flatten it out and then coil it back up, and a lot of people will be synonymous with our products that we make around Australia in particular, and you'll see a lot of our hot rolled coil turned into all of our different products that we make.
It is a really extraordinary process, and I know Amy's going to go in and have a little bit of a look and give us an eyewitness account of seeing the hot strip mill in action, but we'll also talk about the really pretty remarkable history. So turning 70 tomorrow, and I've seen the pictures, had a little look at the history. 70 years ago tomorrow, the Prime Minister, Robert Menzies, comes to open this to much fanfare. I mean, this was a huge deal. It was incredibly expensive, very technologically advanced for the time. really important for Australia's national sovereignty. I mean, the importance, the significance of this project at the time 70 years ago can't really be overstated, can it?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. It was such a significant point for, we weren't BlueScope then, we've been through a number of iterations, but a significant point for our business, but for Australia as well. And there's quite a lot of fanfare. When you look back at some of the photos and video footage we have of that time, it is really a big occasion. And as you said, it was opened by the Prime Minister, Robert Menzies, in 1955. It's a really big sort of ceremony and thing that went with it, because it was such a significant point for everybody,
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to learn so much more. Greg,
cool.
Thanks so much for having us today.
Welcome. It's really good that you're here.
Oh, we're very pleased to be here. So that is Greg, the manager of Hot Mills.
Yes.
That's a great title.
It's a good title.
Thanks, Greg. We'll chat again later.
Thanks very much.
You're listening to ABC Illawarra.
Yes, you are. ABC Illawarra here live from BlueScope Steel, and it's all because the hot strip mill is having a birthday tomorrow. It's turning 70, if you can believe it. We heard a little bit of the history from the manager of the hot mills, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about what the hot strip mills do. So let's see. This was not my idea, Greg. This is your introduction music. The hot strip mill. Not as saucy as we like to think. It's very serious business. But of course, the 70th birthday, we mentioned a little bit about just how significant this piece of infrastructure was, not just for Port Kembla, of course, but for the entire region. It led to all sorts of things, a huge increase in the local population. It led to the dredging of the inner harbour, all of these sorts of things. So just take us back to when the hot strip mill was conceived of and what it meant for steelmaking at the time.
Well, I guess, Mel, it's sort of fundamentally game-changing, right, for the whole process of, what BHP back in the day was doing then, right? And it is, you're correct, it's such a significant change. There was a lot of other activity and developments came on the back of the hot strip mill being built in 1955, right? So 70 years ago, which is pretty impressive, really. But along the way, we've been through a few transformational changes as well to where we are today. But it's a fantastic asset, quite iconic, particularly for our business, but across Australia as well. But it's quite a spectacular place for people to visit and look at. But super important and critical in the whole steel manufacturing process for us. Yeah,
well, I'm a bit jealous. Amy Duggan's going to head inside a little bit later on and give us a bit of an eyewitness account of what it is like. But essentially it is about taking slab and turning it into thin sheets of steel that's then, down the process made into colour bond or whatever. Yeah, well, it's actually, so you're right, we take slab and turn it into hot rolled coil. Our primary purpose is to provide feed material for our Spring Hill and Western Port plants, where they make the next coated, painted products, which then turn into a lot of the products that BlueScope is known for. But we do sell hot rolled coil directly into other markets as well, particularly, you might see the pipe and tube market in Australia, which are obviously important manufacturing streams in the country as well. We do take some of that product and further process it ourselves here into other BlueScope products as well. So it's the lifeline for a lot of the manufacturing supply chain. And look, I'm sure things have changed in 70 years. Everything does change in 70 years. But essentially what you do is the same, isn't it? I mean, you are trying to make this steel as thin as possible, but still with as much structural integrity as possible still when it's thin. So is it just a matter of rolling it out? And, I mean, you roll it out to an extraordinary degree.
Yeah.
Some of these strips are, hundreds of metres long, aren't they?
Yeah, a pretty stock standard coil for us is 1.1 to 1.2 kilometres long.
Wow.
Yep. And we send that initial bar or slab down the line, and within 3 or 4 minutes we've turned that into hot rolled coil. Yeah, and you're right, like the gauge, as we say, or the thickness varies, but some's only 2 millimetres thick. Yes, so it depends on the end use, right? And so the heavier gauge or heavier thickness products might go to the pipe and tube market, for example. But our lighter products, you'll see those eventually turn into roofing products and rainwater goods and fencing products and all that stuff that people understand BlueScope manufactures and that we use in the residential industry.
And it's a 24/7 operation. Yeah, it is constantly underway and it requires constant vigilance. I know that things never go wrong, but I mean the requirement
Let's say that things never go wrong.
Let's say that things never go wrong because of the constant vigilance. So what kind of work and jobs are people doing in there as they monitor this stuff, this really hot stuff being rolled out?
It's such a fantastic and interesting place to work. There's different roles to do lots of different things across our organisation. We do have people that sit in our control room pulpits and monitor and control our process. A lot of our process is automated or semi-automated, but there's still a lot of vigilance and a lot of training and knowledge required to do those roles. We have lots of other roles as well, whether they're tradespeople, a lot of different roles across our 24/7 operation, but then a core group of people as well that will work just a day shift role, which we talked before about. It's quite a simple process. Our metallurgists, they might cringe a little bit when we say it's quite simple. So we have people of all different walks of life and skill sets that are involved in the manufacturing process.
And I guess it's one of those questions that a lot of people ask who don't know much about the steelworks and how it does all operate here, because steel is something that's so hard to manipulate, I suppose, because it's so strong, which is why it's so desirable. There's only a certain type of product you can make here, isn't it? I mean, the fact that we make flat product here as opposed to, beams and rail tracks and all of that sort of thing, it's very hard to adapt it, isn't it? I mean, it's highly specified to make that flat plate steel.
It is. Yeah. It is. And it's also a capital-intensive industry, right? So to make changes so you talked before about, rail bar or different products, you can do those things, but there's a lot of capital investment required to do that. The way we are set up to make flat products is how we've been for a long time and where our focus is. And so you can, we're always developing new products, but they don't venture too far from that flat steel product, right? But different qualities, it's really about the end use and what the customer needs. So it's not about just, continuing to do the same thing we do every day. We want to do that. We want to do that really well, which we do. But we're also looking to do different things where we can as well.
Well, Greg, thanks very much for having us. I know Amy's going to go into the hot strip mill later. I know she's going to talk to some people who work there. But just finally, it's your birthday tomorrow. So what are the plans? Because we were talking about the history, and I still can't get over some of the pictures of thousands of people lining the streets when the Prime Minister came to open the thing. A huge grand dinner dinner. I mean, are you going to do something similar?
They actually did a huge grand dinner in the mill itself.
Yeah, it looks
when they
amazing,
opened it. It
photos,
does look amazing. We've got a really good day planned for tomorrow for a family day. It's, like we talked a lot about the asset and what the asset does, but really, the key for us is our people, and we've got some awesome people. We've got new generations just starting out. We've got people that have been here for well over 40 years. So tomorrow is a celebration with our families. So a lot of our employees are bringing their families on site. We've organised some site tours, like Amy will get to do later, to come and have a look at where their loved ones work. So we're hoping that'll be a really good day tomorrow. So.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Greg. Thanks again for having us. And I'm sure we'll chat to you again throughout the day. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, Mel.
97.3 ABC Illawarra Breakfast with Mel James, live from BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla.
Everyone who lives in Wollongong, there was a time when everybody knew somebody who worked at the steelworks, plenty of families, multiple members working side by side. We're going to meet one lot of 3 generations of the same family. But I think Amy is standing by with someone who's got plenty of family history here at Port Kembla as well. Amy, who have you got there?
Hey Mel, I have got Grant Neilsen, who is the asset manager of the hot strip mill here at Port Kembla. Grant is a 3rd generation worker at the steelworks. Grant, what is your earliest memory of the steelworks?
My earliest memory is actually coming to the steelworks to pick up my dad, who was chief electrical engineer at the time. When kids were sort of allowed on site, we ran up the stairs to his office to hurry him up and get out of the works and come home.
So your grandfather worked here and your father worked here and now you work here. How did that start for you?
Well, for me, my grandfather immigrated from Germany in 1952 to actually come and work at the steelworks. He came over with his wife and my mother. We found that they ended up meeting my father, and that sort of started the ongoing tradition. Dad was electrical engineer, so that meant I had to not be an electrical engineer and chose mechanical engineering.
Chose something very different. You've had a lot of roles at the Steelworks, though, and some pretty interesting stuff. Tell us about the roles you've had and what you're doing now.
I guess for me, it sort of started off in engineering, serviced a lot of areas around the plant, then moved into energy services, and again sort of looked after the cryogenic plant, power generations, the boilers, the turbines. Then moved into an operations role, and then ultimately over to the hot strip mill just on 20 years ago.
Well, I'm going to take a look inside the hot strip mill in a little while, but tell me about the technology and the changes that you've seen over your 43 years here.
That's correct. It's been quite amazing, from a highly manually operated plant to a very automated plant. It's been an outstanding success. Certainly the technology has allowed us to actually improve not only the product but also the productivity that we have. We've got a great workforce here and they're a pleasure to work with.
And you're going to celebrate that in a couple of days because there's about 400 odd people coming here to celebrate that.
Yes, so we've put on a family day, which not often do the family members of our team get to see what's going on here. So we're just trying to recognise this milestone and let people show their family members where they actually work and what goes on.
And Grant, you're a dad of 7, a rather large family. Have any of your children taken up the same vein as you?
No, we've got a few tradies, a few teachers in our place, but none of them really wanted to come and work where Dad worked at this stage. But there might be hope. There's a few more yet to make decisions on what they're going to do, so we'll see.
Maybe when they come along to the family fun day in a couple of days, they'll change their mind. It is like a big family here and a big community. Why do you think BlueScope's so important to the community moving forward, not just historically?
I guess it's sort of like our people are our strength. We have great sort of environment, working conditions. The company actually values the people and the contribution. So it makes it a really interesting and rewarding place to work.
And working in a place like this must come with some challenges. What challenges do you face on a daily basis?
Generally, it's sort of like the people are easy. They're a great bunch of people. It's often the equipment. We've got very new equipment and very old equipment. As keeping them running at sort of peak efficiency can be not only technically challenging, but physically challenging.
And what is the thing that makes you the proudest to work here?
I think for me it's really just the sense of the teamwork that we have with the people. It's a pleasure to actually come to work.
Well, thank you so much, Grant. Looking forward to getting inside the hot strip mill with you and your team, and thanks for the chat today on ABC Radio.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Grant. I'm a little bit jealous. I wish I was going into the hot strip mill, but we will learn much more when Amy heads in there a little bit later on. It's quite fascinating, the whole process. So that and lots more coming your way on ABC Illawarra, live from the BlueScope Steelworks.
97.3 ABC Illawarra Breakfast with Mel James, live from BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla.
It is the eve of the hot strip mill's 70th birthday here at Port Kembla, but it is also just a couple of years away, a few years away from the Steelworks' 100th birthday. And my next guest knows a thing or two about the history of this place. He's the manager of communications here at BlueScope Steel, but also the company historian. He's putting a book together. And Craig, you've timed it perfectly, given that you're just a few years shy of your 50th year of working here.
Yeah,
Crikey.
that's correct. Yeah.
You seriously started working here nearly 50 years ago?
So in January it'll be 47 years for me.
Wow.
And company historian, I'm sort of that by default a little, I guess, mainly because I've always had a personal interest in the history of the place. And it's only been the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I think, that I've realised that I sort of had that interest right from the very start. And I think that interest has come about because I started work at the company called John Lysart, Australia Limited, as a metallurgy trainee, called a materials engineer cadet now, but anyway, so things are a little bit different. But the company always had books and magazines and newspapers, and I sort of kept them, and maybe I'm a little bit of a hoarder in that regard, but I kept them. And
thank God you did.
It is. I'm glad I did, because now I've got a lot of stuff and that I can refer to, and I think all that history has made me very proud of the place I've worked here. And like I said, that maybe sounds a little bit corny, but it's true.
No, not at all.
It's you feel a real connection with it because of the long history and because of the size and the scale of the place.
Well, you're not the only one, Craig. I am convinced that there are people listening who feel a similar sort of connection to the place.
Yes.
Everyone knows someone who's worked here or has some connection to the place over the years because, as we'll talk about in a moment, I mean, at the peak of the place, the number of people employed here was in the tens of thousands. So absolutely crazy. Let's go all the way back, shall we, to 100 years ago. How did this place even come to be?
Okay, yeah, so it's an interesting story, and maybe it's too long a story for this morning, but maybe if I could start and say tomorrow is the anniversary day of the hot strip mill opening, but you actually set up on a significant day today, right? So today actually is a milestone date in the history of the steelworks. So it was on this day, August the 29th, 97 years ago, that Emily Hoskins lit a fire inside what we call number 1 blast furnace. And we're saying that's the time where the operations here first started.
Okay.
So, in other words, in another 3 years' time, on this day will be our 100th anniversary.
Wow.
So it's sort of an important day today in itself.
And Emily Hoskins being chosen from the Hoskins family to do that most symbolic thing of lighting the first fire. So the Hoskins family, how did they come to be the first to produce steel here?
Yeah, so Emily's husband, Charles Hoskins, he started in a business with his brother, George. They basically started with nothing. And they started like a small engineering firm in Sydney, but made a lot of money making pipes, believe it or not, amongst other things. But they eventually took over a business in Lithgow, and there's a lot of sort of origins for that, iron and steelworks in Lithgow, and there were sort of pioneers, a guy called James Rutherford and also another person named William Sanford, who was the first person to make steel in Australia there at Lithgow. The forerunner of the place at Lithgow actually was ironworks at Mittagong, believe it or not.
Wow, okay.
And so it's very easy for anybody here to go up to Mittagong now, and you can see the remains of what was the very first blast furnace in Australia up there. And there's a sign and everything. You see some ruins, but if you go next to a sporting field there, I think it's called Bessemer Street or something there.
Yeah, Bessemer Street, yep.
And if you go down the hill past the sporting fields to the shopping centre, if you park in the car park underneath the shopping centre, the remains of the ironworks are there, so preserved. And there's a lot of really nice interpretive signage and things. But there were people involved there who started the works also at Lithgow. And likewise, you can go to Lithgow and see a place called Blast Furnace Park, and where the ruins are of where there were two sort of quite large for their time blast furnaces. One built by William Sanford and the other by the Hoskins family. And that's quite well preserved. They're sort of ruins, but there's nice walkways and signs and everything, and it's quite, for a person like me, it's really interesting.
Yep.
So anyway, to try and cut a long story short, William Sanford got into a lot of trouble financially just for one person to build like a steelworks, and his business was taken over by the Hoskins brothers, George and Charles. And Charles ran the business and eventually bought his brother out, and he made it a profitable steelworks. But there's a number of reasons why Lithgow was never going to work long term, and one reason why was there was a BHP entered the game, right? And they built a steelworks in Newcastle. And they built quite a modern steelworks, and they had a steelworks there that was a bit different to everywhere else in the world. And their steelworks had a deep water port where they could bring ships with raw materials, in that case iron ore, right next door to their blast furnaces. So they could get the iron ore off their ship and put it basically straight into a blast furnace. And there weren't a lot of places in the world like that. Lithgow, however, everything had to come in and out by railway, which was very expensive. So they realised if they were going to be in the steel game and to compete against BHP, they had to move. And luckily for us, in a way, and not so much for Lithgow, they came to Port Kembla.
And they didn't just compete with BHP, it became part of BHP.
Yeah, so that's another story as well. And really our steelworks here has really been the formation. It's more complicated than this, but really three sort of significant companies have come together to form the Port Kembla Steelworks, and then ultimately BlueScope. BHP, obviously, and the Hoskins business, which became Australian Iron and Steel, because Charles's sons, Cecil and Sid, realised that this was too big for a family business and they needed partners, so they formed Australian Iron and Steel with some other companies. And the third one is John Lysart, the company I first started to work with. And what we see here now today has really been the sort of combination of those three companies. But eventually, yes, BHP, I think in a lot of books it's called a merger, but in a way it was sort of a takeover.
Yeah. Because
the Hoskins and Australian Iron and Steel were having trouble for a number of reasons. Great Depression and technical difficulties and things.
Yeah, well, it's a complex beast, Steelworks, that's for sure. I've got Craig Nealon with me, a company historian with BlueScope here. The historian is putting together a book and a documentary for the 100th birthday, which is about 3 years from now.
Correct.
At the 100th birthday.
Yeah.
Look, Craig, let's fast forward a bit to maybe the sort of more recent history, I suppose, but it's becoming more distant as we all grow older, of course.
Yep.
And I'm talking about when this place was the most thriving, bustling, unbelievable small town in and of itself, with tens of thousands of employees all hopping off the train here. It had its own little hospital, its own post office. Just that part of BlueScope's history is one that I think will be living in a lot of people's memory. It brought enormous amounts of migration to the town. It changed Wollongong completely and was the focal point of the entire region. I mean, just explain to people who don't know or don't really remember what BlueScope was like at that time, at the peak of employment in the 70s and into the 80s.
Yeah, so now you're getting to a time, like you say, where a lot of older people can remember now, not so much the 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But I sort of think, and like I said, I'm proud personally of the history, but I think probably it's a history we all should be proud of for a number of reasons. And back in those days, we were making the cheapest steel in the world. And I can cite a number of references that say that, not just BHP. And we also were doing things like our number 4 blast furnace at one stage held the world record for monthly iron making production. So we were like up there with the best in the world, and in some instances were the best in the world. And people might say nowadays, oh, well, Australia can't make this and can't make that. But I'd argue here we sort of have a world-leading business in a lot of ways still to this day, because we have a product that turns 60 years old next year. Mm-hmm. And if you know the coated and painted part of our business, we say, and we can sort of prove, that we are world leader in that part of the business around the world in far as the sort of quality of the material that we produce. And a lot of that technology came from Port Kembla.
Yeah.
Right? It was sort of born here in Port Kembla. But as far as actually for the community, I could talk a lot,
I know,
Melinda, about...
This is the thing, there's the contribution to steelmaking, but the cultural contribution of this place is pretty extraordinary. Without it, Wollongong would be a very different place. I mean, at one stage, there were people working here from more than 60 different countries.
Correct.
People arriving here without English, many members of the same family arriving here. And it really changed the face of this region forever, and the population skyrocketed over a really short period of time.
Yeah, correct. And you're right when you say, I think everybody will know stories of migrant families and people that have been here, and isn't Wollongong a great place because of it, right? And people can complain about immigration, or they're taking local jobs and things like that, but that was sort of never really the case, as I understand it, in Wollongong. In fact, Australia was like a manufacturing country. We, at that time in the 50s, and the time the strip mill opened, we were making most things here in this country. And there actually weren't enough people to be able to do everything, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It seems crazy now, doesn't it? But so hence the migration. And And of course, not everybody came and worked at the steelworks, but the steelworks was a magnet for it, definitely.
Oh, well, Craig, like you said, we could talk forever about all this stuff. But you know what? We're going to get another chance here. We might both be here in another 3 years' time.
3 years'
Who
time,
knows?
exactly.
So we'll see how we go, and we'll maybe chat then about some more of the history of BlueScope
Yeah,
Steel.
well, thank you very much, and thanks for coming out. And I'm a big fan of the show and everything.
Oh.
And we really appreciate it, and it's sort of an exciting time for us to have you here. So
Thanks for talking to us, Craig.
From Cringilla to Coaldale.
From your street to your suburb. Nobody knows the Illawarra like we do.
You're listening to ABC Illawarra.
Yes, hello and a very good morning to you live here from BlueScope Steel. Thanks for the texts here. Kiri in Cringilla, he says, I could almost see you. Well, that's a bit creepy, Kiri, but there you are, just over the hill there in Cringilla. Dear ABC, he says, Port Kembla between 1968 to 1970 and at the ages of 9 to 11. Oh, we know how old you are now, Kiri. I sold papers every weekday morning before Cringilla Public Primary School started on the Cringilla Railway Bridge. It was so busy, says Kiri. Pedestrians, train commuters, full car parks. Now very different. Yeah, Kiri, isn't it? And that more recent history we were talking about with Craig Nealon is, I'm sure, in a lot of people's minds. It's not that long ago, is it? We're talking sort of the 70s, I suppose, and into the 80s. Here, Heather says, hi, Mel, I've been really enjoying the Steelworks show this morning. Its history is so important, says Heather. My late mother-in-law worked in the draftsman's office as a plan drawer in the 1950s, one of a handful of women employed at that time. She often spoke of her time there and what a fascinating workplace it was. I'm now going to be joined by one family with deep connections that run over 3 generations. I've got Poppy, Pollock and your grandfather and his brother. We've got Russell and Terry as well. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Gee, we should start with you, Poppy, I think, because how extraordinary that you've got, what is this, 3 generations, 4 generations?
4 generations.
4 generations, okay. So tell me whether you thought that there was anything else possible for you except to work at BlueScope.
I always knew that there was other things out there, but BlueScope is such a critical part of Wollongong's industry, and I thought it would be the most suitable place for me to work. There was good opportunity here, and of course with my family being here, I always knew that I could go ask them questions if I had any inquiries, and so that really helped me with my options.
Yeah, Poppy, I didn't even ask what you do. What's your job?
I'm a cadet mechanical engineer.
Okay. And there was probably a time where it was maybe a little bit more unusual for a young woman these days, but I feel silly even asking the question because it's not strange at all anymore, is it?
No, there's so many beautiful women here that really help you out. It's such a supportive environment. Everyone wants to see you succeed, so I feel really welcomed here.
So there's always a lot said about the fact that this place was so huge and so entrenched and ingrained in the community that everyone knew someone who worked here. Did it feel like this place was a big part of your sort of family history as well?
Yeah, definitely. Everywhere I go, I find some legacy of my family. And when I worked at the Six Blast Furnace, I found some designs that they had made, so it's pretty incredible getting
really? With your grandfather's name on it?
Yeah, with the Pollock Designs, which was their company. Okay. So it's pretty cool finding those little treasure eggs.
Yeah, and you must have heard some pretty incredible stories as well about what this place used to be like. So very different. We were hearing from Kiri about how crazy it was at the train station and just the shops, the neighbourhood, so bustly, so packed with people all the time, an entire town really here at Port Kembla. You must have heard all those stories.
Yes, it's definitely changed, and it's cool having that comparison. I don't think many people get that opportunity to see the difference, so I feel really lucky.
And so what do you like about your work here? What do you actually sort of do day to day?
Yeah, I do maintenance, so we do services and checking of bearings and pumps and fans. So I find that's really interesting. I've never done those types of tasks in my life, so it's been really good for my career and to learn some hands-on skills so that in the future when I'm an engineer I can understand everything that's going on.
Well, Russell and Terry, we should talk to you about what you do and when you started working here. Was it just a fait accompli in your family when you were kids that you were going to work at the Steelworks?
We grew up in Kirriville and my father worked here and he was an engineer at the Steelworks. In those days, the steel was new and the company had trouble retaining professionals, and Kirriville was a subdivision by BHP, and the blocks of land were sold and to staff members, and they were given low interest financing. And these are golden handcuffs really to keep professionals.
Yeah.
And as a result, where we grew up, all the kids we played with, their fathers worked here, and Kirrabul Primary School, all the kids were there. So there was a very big awareness of what was going on at BHP, at the Steelworks. And,
it was a company town, wasn't it, really?
And yes, but where we live was particularly a company town. And compared to other jobs, it was a high-tech industry. It was a high-tech industry, and it was a very desirable place to work.
Your father worked here as well, is that right?
That's right, yes.
And so was that just kind of the natural progression of things, that you would just go and try to get a job at the Steelworks? It was just a matter of which job?
Oh, not really. There were other opportunities, but the Steelworks was seen as a very attractive one.
Okay. And what about you, Terry? I mean, was that sort of what was expected of you to work at the Steelworks?
I wouldn't say expected, but like Russ says, like Russ said, it was an attractive proposition, so why not do that? And it turned out pretty well for us too, so it was a good choice.
So what do you do here, Terry?
What did I do?
Oh, what did you do? Retired now, yeah.
Oh, obviously.
Yeah. Well, not so obvious.
Well, I started as a mill trainee, and I spent the first 4 years doing that work. Or 5 years actually, and then spent 2 years in the army, called up, and then I joined engineering after that, and that's really when I got onto the path that suited me. And
we've been talking a little bit about how the place changed. Just finally for you two, I mean, it was a really tumultuous time for the company, for the town, when there were huge efficiencies made, jobs gone, thousands of jobs lost. This place looked very different, and that happened over a period of time, and sort of successive episodes of job losses. I mean, what was that like, living through that period of the history?
Well, a lot of people took voluntary retirement. My father did that, and he was close enough to retirement age anyway. It didn't really affect him particularly. Some people were affected, but a lot of people, they'd found they'd gained good knowledge and training here, and they were quite employable. Often you had to move somewhere else to do that, but they were quite employable. So really, it happened over quite a period of time, and that made it so much more tolerable.
It actually did provide a lot of opportunities for people, and we worked in engineering, and the company policy, which I totally agree with, was to buy machinery and technology for wherever they could. And our job in engineering was to do the interface, to interface it into the operation. But as an engineer designer, you want to do machines yourself. And in 91, Terry and myself left, and we started our own design consultancy. And
they're the designs that Poppy found, yeah?
That's right. And we've always had a strong connection and admiration for the place, and very pleased to see Poppy working here.
Oh, well, that's fabulous. I'd like to thank you, all three of you, for joining us this morning, and really interesting to hear about just the influence this place has had on families over generations. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. That's Poppy, Russell and Terry Pollock, 3 generations of workers here at BlueScope. We've been hearing a bit about the history of the hot strip mill, what they do at the hot strip mill. Let's go inside, shall we? Amy Duggan's there. Amy, you there?
I am, Mel, chatting to Tony Donnelly, the operations manager here at the hot strip mill. I've just been on a tour of this kilometre-long facility. It is absolutely fascinating, and you could stand here for hours looking at all the different stages, the machinery, the heat and the water coming off this is just crazy. And from one end product right through the manufacturing process to the coil, which is what comes out the other end, has been amazing. But Tony Donnelly joins me. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is the hot strip mill, and why is it such a big part of the steelworks?
So the hot strip mill produces roughly 2.85 million tonnes, which is 95% of the product that is made into the slab. So we produce slab, we reheat it to about 1200 degrees, bring it out, descale it, put it through our roughing mill. There's a series of passes. We bring it down from 230 to about 32 mil in gauge. We transport it then to the coil box, which is where we are now. We coil it, and then for heat uniformity, then we uncoil it, chop the head and the tail off, descale it, and then we put it through our 6 finishing mills. The end product varies between 16 millimetre and 1.5 millimetre. It then goes down our run-out table where we cool it from 600 degrees to about 400 degrees. We put it into a mandrel and into a coil, and then we strap it, mark it, and then we send it back over to our storage area in HCPD.
Which is where the final products are made from. The only way I can describe it to you is a red-hot stream, what looks like lava but is obviously steel, coming down and going through a series of rollers, being washed and getting the dirty steel or the scale off the top, pushing through and making it from being quite fat to quite thin, and then going through a coiler into a roll of steel, which then will obviously be used to make colour bond. This whole process used to have around 200 people, and how many do you have now?
So the operating team is made up of about 6, 3 people in the pulpits, a crane driver and a few relief people. Yeah, so 200 to 6 is obviously a lot, so we need automation to do most of that to get it down to the numbers that we are.
And if I can just explain, we're inside the control room at the moment. There's a whole lot of computer screens in front of us, lots and lots of cameras looking at all the different parts of the process. But 70 years ago, there would have been people standing on the floor in a very loud, a little bit smelly, very hot and wet environment.
So obviously the safety standards and work requirements of today is different to back then. Again, with automation, it helps with regard to quality, but also people's safety. And that's an imperative part of our job to ensure that people don't get hurt. That's why we, I suppose, have moved from a fully automated plant.
And tell us also about the sheer power needed to make this happen. We're talking about temperatures between 600 and 1,000 degrees, and there's an awful lot of water going through here. So what does that take?
So the slabs come out about 1,200 degrees, and obviously they exit about 400 degrees. But we're just sort of talking about powers in the finishing mills. So the amount of power we use to produce the steel is the same as Unidera suburb. Same amount of power Unidera uses, we're using right here. And we've got our own high-voltage network within the steelworks compared to outside.
So the water is reused and a lot of the byproduct, including the scale, reused as well?
That's right, yeah. All the water is in a closed-loop system. Obviously, we have a bit of evaporation, which we fill up with industrial fresh water, but we've got our own water treatment plant that removes all the scale and byproducts, and we then cool that and then recycle it and pump it back into the system.
It's pretty amazing to think that this was all designed 70 years ago and is still in operation. How much longer can this technology, if you want to call it that, and this production line be in operation as it is?
So the business has just invested about $1 billion in putting in number 6 blast furnace. So the blast furnace would have a life of about 30 years. So we have to be here for another 30 years to ensure that we can roll the steel that's been produced.
So probably some technological advances coming, but basically the engineering part of this will stay the same.
It will. We're looking at our core box and maybe making some changes there, but it won't change too much. Probably some more capital advance or injection into the plant to ensure that it can operate for another 30 years, but that's about it.
And for you personally, Tony, what's the most rewarding part of being involved in the steelworks?
This is the only job I've ever had. I came in as a cadet, so I've been here for 40 years, and probably amazed that I'm operating a steel plant as big as this and as complex as this. So that's very rewarding, and I find, especially at the hot strip mill, the people here are really good. Everyone's wanting to ensure that we try and succeed, and I find that environment really rewarding.
That's Tony Donnelly, who is the operations manager here at the hot strip mill. And if you ever get a chance to come down here and see the technology, I highly recommend it. It is absolutely fascinating. You could sit here for hours watching the process itself. And Mel, it's just been such an honour to be in here today.
Oh, thanks so much, Amy. That's Amy Duggan, who's been out there, in there at the hot strip mill with Tony Donnelly, who is the hot strip mill operation manager. We are going to try and get in there a little bit later, maybe after we hop off air. I would love to have a bit of a look. And I was mentioning earlier about the grand opening of the hot strip mill 70 years ago tomorrow. And when the Prime Minister, Robert Menzies, came to town to officially open it, we've got some pictures of that. I've been talking about how amazing those pictures were. And I think we've popped a couple of those on our ABC Illawarra Facebook page. So if you want to go and have a look, head there to our ABC Illawarra Facebook page and you can have a little look. Let's go through some of your texts. So Eric in Farnborough Heights says, great to hear the broadcast from BlueScope. I worked there for 37 years and am now a casual tour guide at Inside Industry based at the BlueScope Visitor Centre. Great transition to retirement, reckons Eric. Yeah, we'll hear a little bit more about those tours later on this morning. This person says, who could forget the traffic at change of shift in the 70s and the wooden bridge at Windang that brought traffic to a standstill? A great time in the development of a great multicultural town, says Joe. And here Mark says, hello, Mel. As an addendum to Craig Nealon's abbreviation of BlueScope's recent history, it should be noted that BHP had its own shipping department and the main office was located near the old tug berth. The BHP fleet produced many good seamen over the years, some of whom became port pilots, pilot vessel crew and commercial mariners, running ports around the world and Australia. Kiri has said, dear ABC, Port Kembla, during the 70s in Cringilla, you did not need a watch. The steelworks sirens blew at the end of every shift. At 7:20, wake up. 3:20, almost home from school. 11:20, should be asleep, remembers Kiri. Peter in Corrimal, Mel, in the 70s and 80s, during peak employment numbers at the steelworks, we had 5 workers' trains from Scarborough to Port Kembla every weekday morning and 5 in the afternoon back to Scarborough. More trains than we've got today, I've got to say, on the Wollongong line. There were also a few for the afternoon and night shifts. I don't remember other places in Australia, including Sydney, that had roads of 6 lanes like Spring Hill and Five Islands roads back then. Still proud to have worked in the hot strip mill from 1989 until 2000. Look, we'll get onto some more of those texts in a moment, but I think we've got Ken on the line. Ken, hi.
Hi, g'day. Yeah.
Hi, Ken from Fig Tree. Oh, you remember actually being here at the opening of the hot strip mill 70 years ago?
Yes, I think my mum took me out there to have a look at the place at the opening.
Wow, so what do you... Oh, I mean, so you would have been a young tacker then, Ken, I'm sure. What do you remember?
I don't remember a lot, but I do remember the crowds and the hot strip mill itself and the size of it. As a 9-year-old, it looked immense, and to walk through that. And, but I don't remember any speeches or anything. So
you don't remember seeing the Prime Minister? I don't think many 9 or 10-year-olds would have been that excited about seeing the Prime Minister, maybe. But anyway, yes, but you do remember the crowds. Yeah, what a huge thing it was when this place opened.
Oh, yeah, it was quite impressive. And you're just seeing the hot metal going through. For a 9-year-old, that was just something special.
Oh, I bet, and obviously living on in your memory now, 70 years later. Thanks, Ken. I think we've got Paul on the line too. Paul, are you there?
Yes, Mel, I'm here. Good morning.
Hi, Paul. What did you want to say?
In relation to 79, I moved up here. With the first, between 79 and 81, I needed to get some work, and I found out about 2 subcontracting places who would contract to the steelworks. And I went there, and you had to queue up for 4 or 5 days. They said, but anyway, they'd give you a start. That's how I got a start there. So there was the picker line, and sometimes there'd be these massive warehouses that would go the length of 2 football fields, and you'd have to go in there and you jackhammer out those days maybe 30, 40-pound jackhammer, and you cut out little squares of about 200 metres, and you'd go in big squares, around all the inside the factory, and you jackhammer it all the way out. Then you cut it with steel, and big overhead cranes would come and pick big sections up and take it away. And sometimes it was really dangerous there. It was like fire and brimstone in a way. It was you had to shovel all the concrete and what have you, and dusting that dirt onto the back of the truck, and you have to go down a plank, and then you go over for about 5, 6, 7 metres of concrete, but really dangerous, all surrounded by just virtually slag and really hot metal all the way around you. And it was like an obstacle course, and a little bit backward. It was very dangerous But that's how I started there. And then the hardest job there was underneath the steelworks. It goes down sometimes at least a floor and a half, 2 floors underneath. So what you'd do, you'd go in there with contractors, and there'd be 3 guys which would, work together, and you'd do little jackhammers, really tiny little ones, and you have a scaffold, and you had to have masks on, etc., respirators, and you go up on a scaffold, and you'd be working away with these little jackhammering all these big cracked areas out where they had to patch up and fix them up.
Wow,
and then
Paul,
you'd do it for half an hour. It was so hard. And then you'd have a break and go and shovel the stuff and put it in to get rid of it and that, etc. But it was an amazing place. And that's when I first moved up from the South Coast, right? I was surrounded in rocky bays and an abalone diver and just hanging in those bays and surfing, and within 6 to 8 months I'm in this place where it's just like another world, totally.
Yeah, wow. Oh, thanks, Paul. Thanks so much for that. Just very quickly, a couple more text messages. Pat and Marilla says, we've had 3 generations at BlueScope too. My father-in-law worked on the hot strip mill concrete foundations in the mid-50s. He described how they built the deep pits under the mill and had to address tidal changes in groundwater level to finalise the construction. I worked there 1969 to 2010. My 2 boys work there now, each 30-plus years employed, says Pat and Marilla. Gary in Bulli says, I have fond memories in the 70s in school holidays of delivering ice to the steelworks. Carrying the blocks over the hot strip mill was fascinating. The blocks were for ice boxes for the workers' drinks and food storage. Needless to say, the ice melted quickly as the red hot steel scrolled by, says Gary in Bulli. And finally, here we go. Alice in Berkeley. Hi, Mel. I worked in one of the most important areas of the steelworks back in the late 60s, early 70s, in the canteen, feeding the hungry workers. Alice, they couldn't have done without you. The canteen boy, she says, would arrive before each break, morning tea and lunch, with a list of the men's orders to get them done quickly so the workers had time to eat their meal in the break. We didn't walk. We literally had to run to get the orders done. We didn't have tills that added up the total. It was all added up in our head. Oh, lovely, Alice. Thank you so much. Please keep your memories and your connections to this place coming through. I'm loving hearing them. We don't want to get too lost in the nostalgia because this place has got a lot of history yet to make because it's a huge future for BlueScope. It's a really interesting time in the steelworks history. Of course, steelmakers around the globe trying to work out how to decarbonise this heavily emitting industry. It's an interesting time for BlueScope in relation to energy costs, in relation to, of course, US tariffs, a whole bunch of things. And the person who's kind of in charge of making it all happen is my next guest, and that is Tania Archibald, who's the Chief Executive of Australian Steel Products. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Melinda. Wonderful to have you here.
It's very nice to be here. It was interesting, we were talking a little earlier to Poppy Pollock, who was I think she ended up being a fourth generation worker here at the Steelworks. And it was interesting that she doesn't think there's anything at all unusual about being a female mechanical engineer here. Now the company, since you came on board in 2023 as the CEO, there's a female chief executive, you've got a female chair. It's a very different world, isn't it?
Oh, very, very different. And it's been that way for quite some period of time. And I think maybe it's something that we inherited from BHP when we demerged back in the early 2000s. We've had a very strong merit-based culture. I think across the broader Port Kembla precinct, I think we've got 23% female representation. What's really interesting is that here in the hot mills area, we've actually got 40% operators females. And it just points to this is an entry-level role to come into the steelworks, spend some time here and then go out into some of the other operating units. But we've got a lot of women, and what it actually goes to is you've got to make sure that you're drawing upon the broadest possible talent pool out there. And so they're a great add to the culture and to the way we work.
We've been hearing a lot about the history, of course, but there is so much activity here at the moment that we will talk to some other people about a little bit later. There's the $1 billion Reline project of the blast furnace. There's the plate mill project as well. There's the huge amount of work going on with some of the property that's owned by BlueScope. So much activity. But I'm wondering how you're feeling about the future of steelmaking, given that it is all talk about green steel, about green iron, about how to make that transition and how important it is. Would you characterise this kind of juncture in the history of steelmaking?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I actually feel very positive about it, and particularly as the years have gone by, I think you've got to have a very credible strategy, and we've been, I think, quite consistent in our thinking around this. The way we broadly think about it is, so steel contributes something like 7 to 9% of global greenhouse emissions, so we know that we have to decarbonise, but it is a hard-to-abate sector. And so with the blast furnace operations, blast furnaces obviously dominate the global steel industry. They make up something like 70% of global production, and they are the low-cost producers. And what we've got to be very mindful of is that we work in a heavily trade-exposed environment, and so we've always got to maintain our competitive edge. When we think about the strategy for decarbonisation here at Port Kembla, it's a dual strategy. So first up, we've got to optimise what we have with the current assets. And a lot of that work, for example, around continuing to add more and more scrap recycling into the process. So we're currently at around 25-26% scrap, recycled scrap in the process. That's world leading, and our plan is to, over the coming years, is to edge that up closer towards 30%. We will reach a natural limit about the amount of scrap that we can add into the existing process. And so in parallel, the second work stream, which has been going on for quite a number of years now, is really working through and thinking through, well, what is the ultimate technology change which will occur? And that's Project Iron Flame. And we've talked about that a few times in the past. And Project Iron Flame is really thinking through what is the right technology change that will eventually occur. We think about the natural advantages that Australia has. EAFs come up in conversation quite a bit, scrap-based EAFs.
So these electric arc furnaces? Electric arc furnaces.
Yep. And so when you go back and you look at what makes up global production, 70% blast furnace, there's around about 25% electric arc furnaces. And we're actually building an arc furnace at the moment over in New Zealand, a small one. They will have a role to play in Australia, but the reality is we don't have the industrial base to generate the scrap that's needed for an electric arc furnace. So we can get away with it in New Zealand, where we need about 300,000 tonnes of scrap to make it work. But here at Port Kembla we need 3 million tonnes, and there's just insufficient scrap. So they'll have a role to play. So that then brings us towards direct reduced iron technology, DRI, which is around about somewhere between 5 or 6-7% of global production at the moment. And the reason why DRI is interesting is because natural gas-based DRI will get you towards a 60% reduction in emissions. It's just enormous. Green hydrogen-based DRI gets you something like 80-85%, and then you can put carbon capture and storage on top of that. So that's the pathway we think, the most likely pathway when we think about Australia's natural advantages. We've got the ores, we've got the potential for renewables. So we think DRI is probably the most prospective pathway for us. And that's all of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years, of looking at, there's two types of DRI technology. There's the very mature form of DRI technology, but it's very reliant on those very, very high-grade magnetite ores. And they're very scarce, they're expensive, tend to be quite scarce and expensive. The other type of technology pathway that we're looking at is the question of how do you use those Pilbara ores, those lower-grade Pilbara ores, which are absolutely fantastic for the world's blast furnaces, including here, but they do not work in DRI technology at the moment. The issue there is DRI is a solid-state process, so if you put the low-grade ores in, you get a pretty poor product out and it's just unworkable. So it's a bit like putting diesel into a petrol car. It's a bit of a disaster. So what we're doing there is we set up a partnership a couple of years ago with BHP and Rio Tinto. That's now formed into a formal joint venture. We've had Woodside come into it. Mitsui have also joined us. So these are 4 big players. And what we're doing there, Project Neosmelt, it's a very large technology project, and it's a pilot project which is designed to crack that nut of how can you use the Pilbara ores in a DRI process. And interestingly, the technology that we think we need is going to come out of New Zealand, our operations in New Zealand, where they've been working with a form of smelter technology for over 40 years. And what we're doing is taking that technology out of New Zealand, and we're going to apply it, this smelting technology, we're going to apply it or join it up with the DRI process. And we think that is going to be a potentially more cost-effective means of making sure that we can have a form of substantially lower emissions iron making, and it also secures Australia's balance sheet, being the Pilbara.
Now I know, because as you mentioned, this whole holy grail of being able to make green iron, and potentially that being an export boon and bonanza for Australia, if we could potentially export green iron as opposed to the iron ore, would be incredible. I know that we wanted that project based here, didn't we, in Port Kembla? The WA government generously put in some money, and then for whatever reason, commercial reasons, etc., it's being built there in Western Australia. I'm wondering if it means anything for the fact that WA was saying that they were keen to maybe get into the steelmaking game, whether it means anything for steelmaking operations here into the long-term future if the green iron is there in WA ready to go.
I don't think so. One potential trend that you might see globally is a potential separation of iron making from steel making. But what's planned to be built, we're in the final study phase at the moment, the final feasibility phase, where we're doing all of the engineering work, the detailed plans, etc. That will actually run for about 15 months. So the back end of next year is when we'll get to a final investment decision. We'll then have 2 years to build the pilot. So what we're building is a pilot plant, a small DRI unit and a small smelter, to prove up the process technology. And this is what BHP and Rio Tinto are very, very focused on, because they obviously have an interest in proliferating that technology globally. So what they want to be able to demonstrate is that the technology works. What we want to be able to do is take that technology from the pilot and apply it here. So, and of course, you've got to have all of the other enablers that then fall into place, because that resolves the technology question, but there's other commercial enablers that you need in place, including in the interim natural gas, ultimately green hydrogen, the firmed affordable renewable energy, etc. Our view at the moment is our capability is here, all of our assets are here, all of our people are here. It's hard to imagine steelmaking itself going to Western Australia. I actually think it'll be, if we can crack the nut around the energy supply, it'll be here.
Okay. You reiterated BlueScope's commitment to net zero emissions by 2050. We do keep hearing about how this technology is nascent to get it to scale and to be affordable, particularly in the face of a glut of Chinese steel in the market, etc. All of those commercial things that might slow our progress towards green steel. How many years away are we, do you think, realistically? You've just invested $1 billion in the reline of the blast furnace. That's the highly emitting way of making steel that you'll need to rely on in the intervening period. So how far are we from making green steel, do you think, realistically?
So if we define green steel as low emission steel, because it can be a bit of a loose term, the reality is we could do it tomorrow if we wanted to, but we'd be out of business by next week. And that's the harsh reality, because you're spending billions and billions of dollars. You'll end up with a product that fundamentally is not competitive. And at the end of the day, we have to compete intensely. There's more than 1 billion tonnes of steelmaking just to the north of us, up in China. There's large amounts of supply looking for a home. So we've got to make sure that we're commercially competitive. And that's, of course, all of the work that we're doing around Project NeoSmelt. NeoSmelt, once we build the pilot, we think the pilot will need to run for 3 to 4, maybe 5 years whilst you optimise the raw materials mix, the operating regimes. It is a very, very large pilot that we're looking to build, and that's quite deliberate, because normally when you go through a technology project like that, you would do a pilot plant, then you would do a demonstration scale plant, then you would go to a full commercial plant. What we're looking to do in this case, to try and speed it up, is to go from a large-scale pilot into a full-scale commercial plant. But even then, you have to have all of the critical enablers in place, and the big one is gas. So right now, here at Port Kembla, at the front end, we use about 1 million gigajoules of gas. We're about 2 million gigajoules all up across the entire plant. For us to go to a form of natural gas-based DRI as a pathway towards green hydrogen-based DRI, we need 30 to 40 million gigajoules, which is extraordinarily large in terms of domestic consumption. But of course, it's less than 1% of the gas that it's exported out of this country every year. So we are a country awash with natural gas. It's just difficult for domestic producers to get their hands on it in a cost-competitive way.
Your boss, Mark Vasello, at the announcement of the full-year results was pretty clear in him saying something needs to be done.
It does.
How urgent is it? What kind of risks are there, do you think, to your business if we don't find a way to reserve some domestic gas for use here?
So I think it plays out in two ways. First up, right now, it clearly has an impact on electricity prices. We've seen enormous increases over the last couple of years in our electricity prices. We called out in our annual results that we had a $50 million increase in FY25 in our electricity costs, and that's really driven by the volatility, the lack of access to gas, cost-competitive gas, I would say, in the domestic market. So it has a critical impact on us, but just as importantly, it has a critical impact on our customers. And I think it's important that we maintain a strong industrial base in this country. It affects households. So it's a critical issue for this country. But the other part, again, it comes back to, it's not just the here and now, it's about how do we decarbonise ultimately in the future, because we will need that gas to get that 60% reduction. And once there is a green hydrogen industry, and I feel at the moment we are a long way from green hydrogen, I think that is the reality of it. But once we do start to develop a scale viable green hydrogen industry, you can then start blending in and displacing the natural gas with the green hydrogen. So that is clearly the pathway, but we've got to have cost competitive gas, because at the end of the day, you still have to compete at a global level.
Challenges in this time of transition, but a super interesting time technologically and in many other ways as well. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us here today.
That's Tania Archibald, who is the Chief Executive of Australian Steel Products here at BlueScope.
97.3 ABC Illawarra Breakfast with Mel James, live from BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla.
Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in this morning. Thanks for your texts as well. This person says on the text line, as a youngster in the 70s and 80s, when the BOS would remove slag from the vessel of molten steel, there would be explosions like fireworks felt in Wollongong as the water on the ground vaporised and turned to steam. I'm loving some of these memories. It's really amazing. So such a huge part of this entire community. So that's why we're here. We're here because tomorrow is the birthday, the 70th birthday of the hot strip mill, and loads of you talking about having worked there, or your dad worked there at some stage, but it's just one of the hot mills that we have here. The other is the plate mill, and Shannon Ballard is in charge of the plate mill upgrade. It's another one of those huge projects that's going on at BlueScope at the moment. It's called Project Prime. It's a $300 million upgrade of the plate mill, and it's employing about 100 or so people, I think. Well, anyway, Shannon will tell us more, and Shannon's here now. G'day, Shannon.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
What does the plate mill do?
Well, the plate mill sits just next to the strip mill, and it also takes slabs, heats them up to approximately 1200 degrees, and then rolls them into plate products, which we send downstream for further processing into fabrications such as bridges or defence products or wind towers.
So, Shannon, what's this upgrade about? $300 million is a fair whack. It's not quite like the $1 billion plus of the blast furnace reline, but what's happening there at the plate mill?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're the little brother of the blast furnace, but for me this is a very interesting project, and there's two major parts to the project. The first part is, the bigger part is a furnace replacement. The existing furnaces are quite old, 1963. I first worked on them 30-something years ago, and they were old then, so they've served us well, but technology's moved on and there's a lot to be gained from a new furnace. This furnace will drastically improve our gas efficiency, so we'll be able to return gas back for generation within the plant. It'll improve the quality of our products, and it'll open the way for us to process more exotic chemistry grades that are growing in the market for applications such as wind towers.
Okay, so that's been a big part of what's been talked about as a future kind of opportunity for BlueScope is steel for renewable projects like wind towers, not turbines so much, but the towers, yeah?
Yeah, the towers themselves use a lot of steel, and it'd be fantastic if we could have a large manufacturing base here in the country. And to do so, you need the fundamental equipment to produce the steel, and that's what this project will provide, amongst other benefits. The second part of the project provides some handling and cutting equipment for the heavy plate. So we're talking quite thick steel, 70, 90 or 100 millimetre steel. And you don't easily handle that, so there's some large equipment, a brand new crane, plasma cutter and some turnover equipment to allow that to be handled and cut to size for the end customers. So that's the second part of the project.
Okay, and how far through are you? So you've had to bring on, about 100 or so people to help with the construction of this. So how long a project is it?
Yeah, we're about halfway through now, so about another 18 months or so to go. We're deep in the civil construction part where we've dug a 7-metre hole in the ground, and we're dealing with the rain and all the usual civil construction issues. We're almost through those, and we've got deliveries arriving now. Around 80 ships bringing equipment in from various parts, including some local manufacture, and we've assembled a fantastic team to do it all. So we've got a core project team and then a key group of contractors who'll do our concrete works, our fabrication, our assembly. We've got some quite complicated assembly issues trying to fit it into existing buildings, and we've got some very highly skilled people, which really grateful to have on board to help pull that together.
Okay, so due to be completed when then?
So mid-2027 we should be in full operation, and obviously we've got to get through all the issues along the way, but that team we've got on board, they're committed for that duration.
Right, so in the next 18 months or so, you mentioned 80 ships coming in, and there'll be a whole bunch of truck movements, I think, transporting some pretty big equipment that people might see travelling between the port and here.
Yeah, some of it will come in direct, some of it will come in via containers. A lot of it will be containerised coming in. So we'll have those movements, we'll have cranes on site, and we'll have, I can't forget to mention, the electrical teams that'll be on board. We've got high voltage transformers coming in, and new supply systems, and a very sophisticated computer control system that goes with it.
A lot going on for you, and you're in charge of making all these bits of the machine, the people machine, fit together and work, huh?
Yeah, you could say it keeps us busy, but it's pretty exciting, and really it's the people on the ground doing the work that I'm grateful for. And we have some very skilled and experienced engineers that we've sent overseas for design reviews and inspections. And when it all gets to site, obviously our key concern is safety, so we have a large team pulling that together. So it does keep us busy, but I feel really comfortable with the team that we have doing the job. It's quite exciting.
Good on you, Shannon. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
That's Shannon Ballard, who's in charge of the plate mill upgrade here at Port Kembla. We've been talking a heck of a lot about steelmaking, but my next guest, he basically is in charge of a different side to the business here, which is the property that's owned by BlueScope. We've been talking about just what a vast operation this was back in the day, and now things have been streamlined, things are possibly more efficient. It's not quite the bustly town it once was, that's for sure. And there's a bit of land left over that could come to good use. My next guest is going to tell us about this, and I think we're still trying to get our heads around, most particularly some of this land around the steelworks itself. A huge amount of land with extraordinary potential, and we're still not quite sure what's going to happen with it. And hopefully my next guest can help us out a little. Michael Yiend is in charge of what? How do I describe what you do, Michael? In charge of property here at BlueScope?
Yeah, property development, that's correct.
Property development, okay. Maybe before we get on to the really big side of things, which is the surplus land, the master plan for this land around Port Kembla, just tell me about the very latest with some of the land that's slated for residential development, is my understanding, at West Apto and Kembla Grange. Those parcels of land, they're ripe for development soon, aren't they?
Yeah, that's correct. So we have 200 hectares of land that we own in West Apto that was purchased quite a while ago, many decades ago, for expansion of steelworks. That was never developed on. Some of the land through the rezoning and state processes has been zoned as residential, and we're going to be releasing some of that land into the development market for the development of residential housing, the stuff that is currently zoned as residential.
Okay, so is this BlueScope as property developer, or is this something you'll be outsourcing to others?
No, we won't be acting as property developer. We'll be letting the specialist residential developers develop the land, but we'll be releasing that land into the supply of the development land for residential housing.
And 200 hectares is a fair bit, isn't it? I mean, we're talking hundreds of homes, aren't we?
There's 200 hectares hectares in total. There's 33 hectares of residential zone land. The rest of the land, some of it is biodiversity that will be retained as green space, and other land is industrial and heavy industrial and general industrial that we'd be looking at partnering with capital partners and developers to develop out.
Is that the land at Kembla Grange more so than at West Apto? Or?
That's the entire 200 parcel has those different uses: residential, biodiversity and industrial development land. 200 hectares is a lot of land, so we're looking at releasing the residential into the development market, so then the residential developers can actually develop more housing in the area, and then the rest of that land we're looking at trying to activate employment lands and get that land developed as well to stimulate economy and jobs in the area.
Let's talk about the really very interesting side of things. And I remember when we were first taken on a tour of this particular bit of BlueScope's parcel of land here at Port Kembla to talk about the fact that, some of this was where the original steel was made, for example, and where the original head of BlueScope used to live, those sorts of things, but now is surplus to requirements here at the modern day steelworks. It's an enormous parcel of land with huge opportunities and a kind of blank canvas, and it will really change the face of things. Just remind people, give us a taste again of the size of this, the scope of this, and what it might mean for the city more broadly.
Yeah, no problem. So coincidentally, it is about 200 hectares as well, so about the same area, and it was the site, part of it is the site of the original blast furnace and steel making operations in the Illawarra. As steelmaking evolved, the operations have shifted towards the port, and these areas are now, we term non-operational, not really surplus to requirements, they're just part of the core steel operations. There's some fantastic legacy structures and buildings that we'd be look at repurposing and actually giving a new lease of life as part of the redevelopment. And the key is to try to unlock the adjoining uses that are complementary to steelmaking. So what industries and developments will be complementary to the steelmaking and support the steelmaking and also benefit from being co-located to the steelmaking. That way we can attract external capital investment into it, external tenants, external uses, and also diversify the employment in the area, again with uses that are complementary to be adjoined to a steelmaking operation, to try to further fortify and look towards the next 100 years of steelmaking in the Illawarra.
The ambition of this is to potentially have industrial uses and other uses that would see the employment of upwards of 20,000 people? Is that what's being talked about?
That's correct, yes. So with the master plan, it will be over a fair few decades, but the current master plan and modelling could be in the order of about 20,000 people. It could be north of $10 billion worth of development investment with external partners. This wouldn't be a BlueScope investment. This is actually partnering with the external developers and tenants to be able to develop these other uses. And yes, there's industrial uses, clean energy, that is complementary to the steelmaking. How can we actually have adjoining industrial developments that will enhance the commercial viability of steelmaking and also give new technologies that can give new employment, such as data centres or grid battery stabilisation. There's also other industries that can logically be located in industrial areas that are more, as we term it, social infrastructure and educational uses. We have a MOU with the TAFE where we're looking at how can we expand the training platform and skill set of the generations of the workforce coming through to work in the industries that would be locating on the land, as well as steelmaking and the future of steelmaking and the new technologies that steelmaking will have in the future. So then we can actually grow the workforce, grow an economy and an industry in around the steelmaking, so then steelmaking can be sustainable in the region for the foreseeable future and ideally the next 100 years.
So it's mostly sort of industrial and kind of steel adjacent industries, I suppose, because I remember when this was first touted and everyone was very excited thinking, oh, maybe we'll have our own version of Wallywood and we could have a big movie studio there, and some people wanted a theme park, and it's kind of been decided upon, has it, who the tenants will be?
Yes and no. So those aren't completely precluded. So there's certain uses that are prohibited that we won't be looking at that aren't complementary.
Will we?
I don't necessarily think it will be a Wally World, no. But all the uses need to be complementary to being located next to an industrial area. education areas, social infrastructure, so some of the arts and opening up areas for the community to be able to use some of this area. As I said, 200 hectares is a large area of land. 200 hectares, to put into perspective in Sydney terms, is pretty much the entire CBD.
Wow, so that gives people a sense of the scale. The entire Sydney CBD, working out what the heck you can do with it, and you have pretty much a blank slate.
That's correct. So there will be a diversity of uses, and the uses will be located in the logical locations where they're not going to clash with each other but be complementary and ideally enhance the co-location of it. So if you do have a TAFE, you do want to have some social infrastructure there. You've got to have publicly accessible areas. You need to have some level of amenity for the people that are going to be there. We want to open this area up to the community. Some of the green spaces we want to go through, revitalise, enhance, and then give access to those areas. So that's all part of the master plan. It will take a while to evolve. There is opportunity definitely for the arts and some of the other community uses, which there's a demand in the area and they haven't got these spaces available as yet. And we're looking at how can we accommodate all the uses that the local area needs to further develop the economy and develop the connection that we currently have with the community.
So then just finally, Michael, when will people start to see the beginnings of this transformation? You say it's a long-term project, but for a piece of land, an area the size of Sydney CBD, it's pretty remarkable. When will people start to see something happening?
So the key first step is having this section of land zoned to make permissible all these other uses beyond what heavy industry steelmaking. So that's the current zoning of the land. So we're about to go through a state assessed rezoning process, which will open it up to these other uses. Once that process is complete, we will then be able to start developing components and staging the development. We're currently looking at a master plan that will be decades in the delivery. Once we've landed on that master plan post the rezoning, we can then give more information as to how we see it unfolding, what stages will be happening first, and what will be seen as these first mover opportunities. The aim is to really stimulate the jobs, stimulate the economy, stimulate the investment in the area.
It's really amazing because this is not pie in the sky, it's happening, isn't it, Michael?
That's correct, yeah, it's happening. It's a fantastic opportunity to be able to go through and repurpose this land and unlock significant value for the community and also for BlueScope.
Michael Yiend, thank you so much for talking to us.
Great, thank you.
That's Michael Yiend in charge of property development here at BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla, and then also, of course, you'll see that land at West Dapto and Kembla Grange be developed in the coming years.
ABC Illawarra Breakfast with Mel James, live from BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla.
Look, coming up in just a moment, we'll chat to Amy about what she's been up to in the last little while around the hot steel mill here today. But first, I think we've got Stephen on the line. Hey, Stephen.
Hi, good day, Mel. How you going?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. So you've got some memories of here, do you?
Yeah. My father was the superintendent of the hot strip mill, and as you can imagine, the hot strip mill had a lot of mirth, like the remarks made by kids at school. But yeah,
we had our little strip of music that we played a little earlier.
Exactly. Yeah, it was always a bit of fun. Yeah, no, he was the superintendent. I've forgotten exactly when he started, but it was certainly mid to late 70s. And I just have these great memories of going on little trips to the steelworks with Dad. As I said, I very much doubt whether you can do that these days with HS, but it was just a fantastic place as a kid. And just the sort of heat, the noise, as I mentioned, seeing those really big hot billets being rolled out and then, flying down the tray, and then every now and again one would smash into the rolling thing and end up all over the floor. So, yeah, it was
would never happen these days, Stephen.
I very much doubt it. I wouldn't be allowed near it. But Dad was a long time. He started there as a trainee, as a metallurgist in the 50s, and ended his career at the head office in Melbourne. So, but yeah, he never loved the head office as much as he loved the actual being on the plant. But as I mentioned, it had in the text, it had had its downsides too. There was some heavy industry, so there was some nasty accidents which Dad had to go out in the middle of the night to attend and things like that. Yeah. But yeah, it was just that was just a terrific experience, and I feel quite privileged to have had that access in my sort of adolescent come teen years. So yeah, there's strong memories, yeah.
Oh, well, hopefully we've stirred some memories for you this morning.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been really, fabulous. Oh, thanks so much, Stephen.
Thanks very much for the chat. See you, Mel. Bye.
See ya. So there we go. Stephen, wow, his dad was a superintendent here back in the day. So many of you with so many connections to this place. It's really amazing. Thank you so much for all these calls and texts that have been coming in. Amy, you would have experienced a little of what Stephen was talking about, how hot it is in the hot strip mill. What have you been up to?
We've been walking the kilometre long, it's a massive big industrial shed, of course, filled with this really heavy duty machinery, but a fabulous process with the heat, the steam, the water, and then the coils, obviously, at the end of the process in there. So I got to chat to Rebecca Shaw. She, every 20 rolls, goes down onto the floor, one of the few manual rolls still in there, on the floor, and cuts off the end of this coil so that they can do a quality check, I guess. Now, that roll is 400 to 500 degrees as it comes off the coiler, and it weighs the piece that she cuts off weighs a couple of 100 kilos, and each of those coils weighs around 20 tonne. So here's a little chat with her. I'm in the hot strip mill with one of the operators, Rebecca Shaw, and we're right at the final stage where the coil has been rolled and it's coming off the conveyor belt line. Rebecca, tell me what's about to happen next.
What's going to happen with these coils, they're actually going to keep going on the line underneath the road, come up over to the K building, and with that they actually go to the different areas within BlueScope, to the little lines, and even to our ports where they actually get transferred over to the Western Port or even overseas. The job here is actually just checking, make sure the quality is up to standards, just checking little things on it.
Lines, bruising, and we watched the little robot put the stamp on there and the serial number, I'm assuming.
Yep, that actually states where it's actually going. So with the cameras you can actually see across the line where it's actually going. You'll see a train every now and then come across, and it'll pick it up and it'll transfer it over to the other areas.
And you don't just get to sit in here in this glass and computer technology box all day. You're going to go down on the floor in a minute.
Yeah, I'm actually going to cut a wrap. What that actually physically means is I'll select a coil where it'll go into our station. I'll cut the outer layer of it, and then we'll actually physically check it that it's up to our standards, which usually is.
Doing quality control. That's Rebecca Shaw from the control room with the automated and manual parts at the end of the coil.
Wow, I mean, you're just showing me a video here. What she does each day, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. And next time you see a truck going up Mount Ousley and it's only got a couple of coils, and you think, what a waste of space. They could have loaded that up. Just remember, each one of those is around 20 tonne.
Nice one, Amy. Amy will be back in just a moment to tell us a little bit more about these tours you can go on here at BlueScope. But a couple of your thoughts on the text here, a few memories. Here Dean says, I was 12 years old in the early 70s selling newspapers at Taronji Station every morning for the workers. There were about 4 or 5 trains that would stop at Taronji for the day shifts. Peter in Shell Cove says, I spent a few years working as a truck driver in the steelworks on night shift. It was beautiful, like working in an industrial art gallery, reckons Peter. All the dirt and grime was masked by a soft yellow lighting. There were striking shadows cast by overhead conveyors, splashes of molten metal like a giant's sparkler. Oh, Peter, so poetic. And billowing clouds of pure white steam providing a backdrop. Unforgettable, reckons Peter. I also spent years carting products out of the works in daylight. Not so pretty, says Peter. Yeah, lots of memories. It's been such a huge, huge history and a big, big part of this town, that's for sure. And now one of the biggest projects to be undertaken at the Steelworks for quite some time is the relining of the blast furnace. $1 billion project, stacks of people employed to do this. And joining me now is Justin Reid with a bit of a reline update for us. Justin, good morning.
Good morning, Mel. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Look, I say $1 billion. I say a whole stack of people have been brought in to work here. What is the relining of the blast furnace? Explain to people why it's necessary.
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. So at the moment we have an operating blast furnace. Number 5 blast furnace produces all of the iron that you see coming through the hot strip mill here is steel today. It has a life, so it will come to the end of its life, which is to do with the internal lining of that blast furnace. And so at the moment we're preparing number 6 blast furnace to take over that role when number 5 blast furnace comes to the end of its life.
Okay, and people probably remember a few years ago now when number 6 was shut down and just 1 blast furnace was in operation. So now that's basically going to be ramped up again. Well, what's required? What is the actual relining of the blast furnace all about? I know it has to withstand just unthinkable amounts of heat, but what are you actually doing?
Yeah, so the reline of the blast furnace is actually we pull out the existing lining. So there's a refractory lining in the base of the vessel, and then there's a whole series of staves within that blast furnace shell. We actually literally remove those and we reinstall a brand new refractory hearth in the base of the furnace, and we put in a new series of stave linings within the blast furnace so that it is ready to go for the next 20 years. That's the traditional relining of a blast furnace. When we talk about the $1.15 billion investment, there's actually a significant investment in refurbishing a lot of the other parts of the blast furnace that haven't been operated since we closed it in 2011. The other part of the major investment is there's over $100 million in environmental improvements that we are investing in the number 6 blast furnace asset.
This might sound really silly, but just like we thought that the hot strip mill was a bit like a pasta maker, we're just trying to, use our little brains to understand what's going on here. But in terms of the blast furnace, is this a bit? It's just like a big kiln, yeah. I mean, you're just trying to. Is it like when you buy a really efficient and expensive wood fire heater, and some of them burn really efficiently, so they produce less smoke? Is that kind of what you're trying to do here?
Yeah, absolutely. For everyone who's got an old washing machine at home that they've converted into a backyard fire, very much like that. So we put coke that comes from the Illawarra coal, and we put sinter that comes from the ores that we purchase in, and we put those in layers in a gigantic bucket, and then we push air in the base of that, and the air is 1200 degrees Celsius, and there's a chemical reaction within the blast furnace that uses the carbon from the coke to then reduce the iron ore. That iron ore then becomes liquid iron, and so we then tap that molten iron out of the bottom of the blast furnace vessel.
There was a lot made of this at the time when BlueScope did make this investment decision, because this is a kind of transitionary thing, isn't it? I mean, the hope is that you will not need that particular blast furnace or this particular technology soon enough. You mentioned it had a 20-year life, but it sounds like, even from talking to Tania Archibald earlier, the hope is that there will be some kind of green iron, greener steel option available. So, that was a big decision, wasn't it? It's a lot of money to invest in something that maybe won't last its 20-year life.
Correct. That's exactly right. And so, as I mentioned before, number 5 blast furnace has a life, and it will come to the end of that life. If we didn't make this investment in number 6 blast furnace right now, we don't actually have another method to make the steel that we need to run this steelworks. And so hence the relining of number 6 buys us that up to 20 years. And I guess there's a whole bunch of other people within our business who are working on those alternate plans that we'll look to implement within that time frame.
So how many extra people have you had to employ to do this project?
Good question. So at the moment, there's a team of 160 engineers who have been working on the design and the specifications of the reline. And then at the moment, we've got 350 trades at site today. We're 2 years into the 3-year program of works. So we've still got a year of work to do. And really that last year is putting it all back together again. And so it's going to get quite busy. As I said, we've got 350 trades at site today working on reconstructing the furnace.
Okay, so it all sounds like it's going according to schedule. This was how long it was meant to take, basically?
Yeah. I mean, like all projects, we've got some challenges, but absolutely we are on track for August next year.
Okay. Justin, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
There we go. That is Justin Reid about one of the biggest projects to be undertaken at BlueScope in quite a long time. This is the 1.1 something, 1.3, I think, was it, Justin? Who knows? Once you get over $1 billion, doesn't matter, does it? Justin Reid about the blast furnace at Reline project.
97.3 ABC Illawarra Breakfast with Mel James, live from BlueScope Steel at Port Kembla.
I'm hearing so many memories of people who used to work here, have been here. Bruce says, morning Mel, a lot of the paths at the Illawarra rhododendron and rainforest gardens are made from bricks from the Port Kembla blast furnaces. Oh, interesting. So besides wandering through the gardens to see the plants, you can see the bricks, their numbers and when they were made. And if people want to see a bit more on their history, we have an article on our website, irrg.org.au, is it, Bruce? I'm not sure. But anyway, another lovely little piece of history. And if you've ever been intrigued and wanting to learn more about the steelworks, you can always book in for a tour and you'll see all sorts of things, how the place operates now, learn a lot about the history. I think Amy's got one of the tour guides with her now. Amy, what's going on?
Hey, Mel. Well, I've got Nikki McCarthy-Hicks, who's the Inside Industry Tourism Manager here at BlueScope Steel. And, Nikki, people drive past the steelworks every day, but not many people actually know what's going on inside the walls.
I know, it's amazing. We're surrounded by a lot of greenery and the gates, of course, but we've got the exclusive license to bring you inside, and you can look up close to everything you've been hearing about this morning.
I was lucky enough to just do a tour of the hot strip mill, and it was mind-blowing, let me tell you. What is the reaction you get from visitors the first time they see something like this?
Quite often it's a wow. Like, I had no idea. It's so big, it's exciting. So we've never had a negative response. People love it.
You've been running the tours here for a number of years. Walk us through some of the things that people get to see.
It's, I believe, the only place in the world where you're in an operational industrial work site. It's of giant magnitude and proportion. So we take you around, we talk about the whole steel making process, but you get up close to the steel making process. You go to the BOS, the slab caster, and of course the hot strip mill, which is the shining glory today.
It is absolutely amazing, and it is one of the only places you can get this close to a manufacturing process like this.
I believe that's correct, yes. And it's right here in Wollongong. Beautiful place.
Who usually comes along to these tours?
Anyone and everyone. This year alone, we've had over 3,000 school students through, which is awesome. So we play a big part in that education space. We also bring the public in every Friday and Saturday at 9:30 a.m. and private tours, industry groups. Tomorrow, actually really exciting for us to be involved in the 70th celebration. We're actually bringing family and friends all day along the hot strip mill. So they're coming in to have a look, and our tour guides will be leading those tours.
And of course, people are 100% safe when they come in here, not near the 1,000 degree burning presses.
100% safe. All of our guides are trained in safety as a priority. All of our guides and participants wear all of the appropriate PPE. So we've got all of that on hand, and we make sure everyone's ready to go before they come in.
So you can get your photo taken looking like a minion as well, Nikki. Now, BlueScope doesn't just do stuff inside the BlueScope walls. They also have a role outside in the community.
Absolutely. The BlueScope Wing Community Partners Program, it's an awesome part of the community and does a lot of work with different activities. I mean, for example, tonight I think Southern Stars is launching, so that involves thousands of local primary school kids, and that's one of the things that the BlueScope program helps support, amongst many others.
What's your favourite spot or moment on the tour?
I think traditionally everyone's going to call out the BOS as the highlight of the tour, but I have to say my favourite actually is the hot strip mill. I love seeing that coil roll up when it's red hot and then spin back out with all the water. It's pretty exciting.
It is pretty exciting. You could watch it for hours and hours, a bit like a burning hot fire. Nikki, for anyone who's listening who's never been, how can they get in touch, book tours and get here?
Jump online, insideindustry.org.au, and you can find our public bookings right there, or give us a call, which is on that website, and we can organise something private for you, or you bring your school in, but definitely come. You won't regret it.
That is Nikki McCarthy-Hicks from Inside Industry Tours, Mel, and highly recommended to come in and see what's going on here.
Thanks so much, Amy, and to Nikki as well. And thanks to this person who said, yes, I've done one of their tours into the hot mill and the blast furnace several years ago, and it was brilliant. There we go. We've got some messages on our Facebook page as well. Here's one from Kevin. I spent a great career in the hot strip mill as superintendent of maintenance. Met great people. My father worked at AIS. My two sons worked at caster and blast furnace. And now my granddaughter currently works at BlueScope. So that's 4 generations of Kevin's family. I attended the hot strip mill opening as a schoolboy in 1955 with my father when Sir Robert Menzies dropped the first slab out of the furnace. I enjoyed my 41-year career with BHP. There we go. Thanks so much for that. Oh, here Stuart says, no mention of any hot strippers. No, Stuart, not that kind of hot strip. Oh, dear. Anyway, it's been a joy and very, very interesting. And we heard that not only, of course, is tomorrow the hot strip mill's 70th birthday, we learned that today was the day 97 years ago that the very first fire was lit by Emily Hoskins to make steel here for the very first time at Port Kembla. So we also heard from Tania Archibald as well about the big challenges facing steelmaking around the world, including here in Australia, the price of gas, etc., and what to do to decarbonise this heavily emitting industry, but one that creates something that is needed in all sorts of industries, including, of course, here in Australia in homemaking, in particular house building. So, look, it's been an absolute joy being here at BlueScope. I'd like to thank them all for having us. Maybe we'll come back in 3 years when they turn 100. What do you reckon? That sounds like a bit of fun too. So, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Thanks so much for all of your memories as well. I loved hearing about how different it all was way back when.
And with that, this episode draws to a close. We hope that you enjoyed our extended podcast presentation of this special event at our Port Kembla Steelworks. We acknowledge in particular the many BlueScope people who participated in and helped to organise the live broadcast, along with the employee and family events that followed at the hot strip mill. Of course, we extend our heartfelt thanks to the ABC Illawarra radio team, who gave our employees and members of the local community a wonderful platform to tackle important questions and share stories about an industry and a region that means so much to them. Make sure to visit the show notes for links to further information, including a full transcript and production credits. Thank you for listening to the Voices of BlueScope podcast, and we look forward to having you again soon.